Please, what?
605, not 506.
Oh, yes. If we can please stand and say. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Reinhardt.
Yes, sir.
Superintendent's reins.
Yes. Let's see. Nancy. There you are. I would like to bring to the board's attention some information related to the wonderful opportunity that happened this summer. And we really want to share this with you so that you know what good came from our partnership with Penn State Lehigh Valley and how it helped our students in terms of employment opportunities this summer. And I have with us tonight Nancy Coco from Penn State Lehigh Valley. Nancy, could I ask you to come to the podium, and accompanied by Dan Gonzalez, who was our point person at the high school. These two individuals really helped to spearhead this program for our students, and I'll let both of you talk and share some information with us.
Well, I'll begin. Obviously, I'm Mr. Gonzalez, 12th grade principal at Easton High School. Thank you all for coming out this evening and giving us the opportunity to really discuss a phenomenal opportunity that 19 of my seniors had this past summer. Last spring, Mr. Reinhardt put me in touch with a great asset at Penn State University who's become a phenomenal partner for us in the Easton School District. And we worked very closely with the Lehigh Valley Workforce Development Board in coining what we refer to as the E3 program. E3, or if you're a math teacher, EQ, stands for Easton Employability Experience Program, and it was exactly that. Basically, 19 of my seniors were given the opportunity to explore potential careers that they want to potentially get involved with in the future. Now, we didn't just throw these kids in there. We did try to get them prepped as much as possible. So for a week, we kind of had like a meet and greet session. Penn State and the grant program hired job coaches and mentors where they had workshops to focus on organizational skills, other valuable workplace assets that they need, interviewing skills, literally what to wear and what not to wear, because that's something that my seniors absolutely are in dire need of these days. They also got to refine resumes, which they did get to work on throughout their coursework as juniors. So that was the first week, and then towards the end of the week, and Mrs. Coco will share some of the local businesses that partnered up with us to make this possible for our kids. We kind of had a meet and greet session with those employers. And we placed them into areas that they were interested in, of course. And for 6 weeks, they went to work at a minimum of 30 hours a week. Some of them went well in excess of 30 hours. So not only did they get great workplace experience, they got paid too. Okay, so that's not too shabby. They got $8.50 an hour to get some pocket change, a little bit more than pocket change. And just to see some of the faces of some of these kids when they literally got their first paycheck ever written in their name was priceless. And I literally have goosebumps while I'm talking about it. The parents and the family members that I discussed, where their kids had the opportunity to be part of this, are forever grateful. A lot of these kids made phenomenal contacts, and it's something that, you know, myself as an administrator, myself as a parent, I really hope that we can continue to see this occur for our kids at Easton and hopefully expand moving forward. So it is my pleasure to introduce to you someone that has been very instrumental in making this happen. She's the Director of Continuing Education at Penn State University, Ms. Nancy Coco.
Thank you. At the Lehigh Valley campus. I'm in from University Park. I am so happy to be here with you this evening and to feel again, as I have since I made first contact with the district, the warm welcome that is always seems to be part of Easton's signature, and I'm very grateful for that. We work at Penn State Lehigh Valley with many, many school districts, and I have to say, when this grant opportunity first presented itself through the Workforce Development Board, I thought of you, and I thought of Mr. Reinhardt and the conversation we had had at the campus earlier in the same school year when he was envisioning that there would be more opportunities opening up to students. And so I wrote the grant on our behalf, my team and I, with Easton School District specifically and exclusively. And we were awarded the grant. And as Mr. Gonzalez shared with you, it was called E3 because it had 3 dimensions to it. It had a week's worth of get ready, get set job skills. It had 6 weeks worth of on-the-job actual employment. And these were great companies that stepped up, your own Easton companies. Alfaro and Company, we had Pearly Bakers, we had architects, R&D architecture. We had Boys and Girls Club. We had 7 different businesses, Merchants Bank. So the students didn't just get a minimum wage chance to get a job, but they really got a glimpse into a career. And then we had a showcase experience at the end, which we're going to show you a little bit. We have a short clip, and thanks to the morning call for covering the story right from recruitment to fulfillment. The students, in their own words, demonstrated what this really did to open up possibility for them. When I was a kid, I started working when I was 10. I don't even think there were working papers back then, so it wasn't like I had to wait to start working, and I made $3 an hour. And that was a little bit ago, it wasn't that long ago. But I think what we really discovered was that our students today, because of the workforce, folks not retiring, and because of higher skilled jobs at entry level, they don't have necessarily the opportunity to step into a job and see a potential career as high schoolers. They almost may need a little bit of career and tech support or college readiness before they can actually step into the world of, I can see myself in this career. And the Easton employability experience gave them that opportunity. So I'm really grateful to you all for saying yes and for letting us work with you in this first step of what we hope is an ongoing collaboration. Now, I was at the Workforce Development Board today, our funder.
Yes.
And they reflected on several things. One, we were not fully enrolled as we had hoped to be. We had hoped for 35 students, and we were actually able to enroll 19. So we chatted about that, and we said the district is at the ready to recruit now. Let's start recruiting now. And they said, well, wait. We have to figure out if we will be funded. And of course, we all understand that those funding cycles shift. So we're very hopeful. They also complimented as the one program in the 6 who were funded that actually went into the workforce and got those kinds of jobs that would lead to careers. Because they said it wasn't just sort of an entry level, nothing wrong with these positions, but it wasn't just an entry level, maybe get a job at Kmart and minimum wage kind of stock shelves. These were really a glimpse into what you might like to do for your career. And they also complimented the showcase experience at the end, which really celebrated the students. So, thank you again for the opportunity. They will know in February, they said, if we will be refunded, if the funding is there, first of all. Things are changing, as we know. So we'd like to hope that we'll have the funding and that they would fund our project for another year, potentially more. But I think we're at the ready to double our numbers and really have the kind of community impact that we hope to have for the students and for the Easton area.
I'm quite confident that we can meet that number. I was very very sorry to see that we couldn't get more to participate, but one of our challenges was we received this grant on the late side. School ended. We didn't have a great length of time to recruit.
I think we were told we had about a day.
Yeah,
when they actually said, go ahead, you have the funding. So we were able to do a little teaser with the students at an assembly, but we weren't really able to start gathering paperwork and data. So we look forward to next year, and with your permission, we'd like to share what some of the students said about the program.
Yes.
So thank you.
We're really pleased to be the host and sponsor of this Easton Employability Experience, which brings together many collaborators in community and business on behalf of rising high school seniors and a jobs employability experience for the summer. The students had pre-employability workshops where they learned skills and worked on their resumes. And then they had 6 weeks of job experience that was funded by the Lehigh Valley Workforce Development Board. And tonight we're having a showcase experience that really celebrates their achievements as they round out their summer of work.
I ended up in this program when I first got called down to an assembly where they talked about it, and it piqued my interest since it gave me an opportunity to go out and get some job experience, get some interview skills.
Another student in there. That was a short clip. Very nice.
So the end result is that we broadened our relationships with a lot of businesses in the community. We're able to make a tremendous connection to these businesses, and we can't underscore our appreciation of their willingness to help us out with this. And we also nurtured our relationship and broadened our relationship with Penn State Lehigh Valley. They've done a terrific job for us. And as Nancy mentioned, we did have that conversation, and this came up, and boy, they took full advantage of the opportunity, and we're really grateful. Lots of kids benefited from this, so thank you, Nancy. Nancy, as a symbol, if you will, a token of our appreciation, we have a paper certificate for you, and we have one for Mr. Gonzalez for being the strong advocate that he was for the program. Thank you both very much, because
Red is my favorite color.
yeah, be great for Frank.
Hey.
Ready for Frank? Thank you, Nancy. Danny, thank you so much. Really
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Very good.
Mr. Geiger, can you make sure Mr. Gonzalez has an Eagles tie on next time he comes?
Ask him if he stayed awake to watch the whole game.
All right.
All right.
We're going to make a quick change to the agenda. We're going to do academics and policy first, as it should be relatively quick if you guys are prepared, and then we'll go into our long-range plan. Well, I mean, if they're prepared to, because they were planning to go second and third, and now I moved them to first.
I'm just going to jump in so
Sure.
not here.
Yeah.
The academics and ed report, you all received that, so again, I'm not going to elaborate too much other than questions that you may have. The 4 categories that are reported on tonight were just some curriculum work that we continue to do by preserving some of the time that's available in our teacher contract at 7:30 time. Allows us to get groups of teachers together. Also, the report card reporting period started. Our middle school on up, their reporting first marking period ended on November 2nd, and so you'll be receiving report cards in the very near future. And elementary on the trimester, so that'll be happening in December. I also reported on CPEC, our in-service on November 8th, just some of the activities happening there, and a brief excerpt of our diversity work and the conference that Allie, another one of our teachers, and I attended. It was very beneficial for our knowledge and working efforts. Any questions? I'm happy to field them.
Did you get any? I do have. Did you get any feedback so far on the new report cards at all?
The teachers have been looking at them for quite a while now, and so far the feedback has been positive. Of course, but at the elementary level, secondary 6 on up is the same traditional. The elementary, I would gather that the next level of feedback will come once they've had to experience that. But so far, the systems that we have in place seem to be very palatable and much easier than what they were doing previously. So far, people seem pretty comfortable.
I'm looking forward to having a year out and
And I think I added in this report, but if you don't know, there is a link that Ann McIntyre put on the curriculum change. I think I added that in my report. That'll give you about a 3-minute, 4-minute excerpt about the report card, so you're welcome to watch that at some point as well.
Thank you.
Just because I'm supposed to, I'm going to ask if there's anyone from the public that would like to be heard. There's no one here, but no, that one. Well, yeah, I was going for K-12 first, if anybody won't be heard on K-12.
I'll pick up on that.
I don't think many people are coming to talk.
I don't think so either. I just wanted to give a brief report about what's going on with our cyber school. Currently, we have 25 students enrolled K through 12. Right now, one of the big pushes that I've been making since taking over this job is the progress monitoring and making sure that there's frequent communication with the parents and the students. So to pull in that progress monitoring piece, we've made sure that all the guidance counselors at the schools now have access, PowerSchool access to BLN, which is our cyber carrier. Also, the parents are getting weekly ILQ reports, which is basically how the kids are doing academically and their attendance, and that's getting directly emailed to them. And then generally they're having follow-up from me. So I'm making phone calls home on a weekly basis, at least a weekly basis. There are many times it's more frequent, just to check on how everything's going with the kids, to make sure that they're being as successful as possible in the program. Some new procedures that have been put in place since I've taken over the job. One of the things that you received is there's an ECA resource page now that I put together, which are basically some school-wide resources that the kids can access, because they still are our students, and we want to make sure that they can, go to after-school activities, and they can get tutoring. I put in some community-based resources that they can also access, and then also some web-based free resources that they can get as supplementary help for them, while they're doing their work online. The other thing that we're putting in place now, which is kind of new, is our cyber contract. The cyber contract, basically, when students are enrolling, we're giving them a contract that's showing them what their responsibilities are as students, as parents, and our responsibilities and roles are as a school district. And I think it's giving them a lot of support. They know what to expect. And then if we are seeing students who are having some struggles, something new that we've just really started within the last month is opening up part of our Ready Lab at the high school as a cyber center. So those students that are having some difficulties can come in, and basically they just let you know that they're coming in. Let the building know that they're coming in, and then they can go in there and work on the computers in the Ready Lab. We have teachers that are there as supports, and we have paraprofessionals that are also dedicated to helping those students. So that's been working out really, really well, and I'd like to see that expand a little bit more into the future. And the last thing that I've attached up there is the parent resources. Anytime that we have an inquiry, we just want to make sure that the parents understand what the process is. So the guidance counselor is sending that to the parent to just give them a basic timeline of what's going to happen so that they're fully aware. We just want to make sure, again, that communication piece is very clear for the parents going through this entire process so that everyone feels comfortable and they know what they're going to be entering into if they decide to take cyber as the option for them. Our next point, I just wanted to speak briefly about the cyber endorsement program. Currently, we have 6 teachers that are completing course 3 this semester. They'll be starting course 4 next semester, and that would, after they finish course 4, they will be cyber endorsed. I have 7 teachers that are going to be starting course 1 in the spring semester, and they'll be going through that 4-course cohort as well through East Stroudsburg or through the IU, which will ready them to be writing the curriculum, and then possibly, if we have the numbers, that they would be teaching courses in the 2018-2019 school year. So we will have a total of 13 teachers in K through 12 that would be able to enter into that program. The last thing I just wanted to touch upon was looking at hybrid learning in the district. This is something that has been an ongoing process, and we've had technology in our district. But now we'd like to make a little bit more of a push in hybrid learning. We recognize that it's very important to promote the lifelong learning, the 21st century skills, and really one of the big things I think is the academic adaptability, that the students can take these technology skills and translate them into any academic area that they're enrolled in, and also to promote that readiness for the future, for whatever they do past their time at Easton Area School District. It's also going to provide the teachers with another way to differentiate the instruction within the classroom and make sure that all students have equal access to programming, and that they're better prepared to communicate, collaborate, be creative thinkers, and also use those critical thinking skills. Do you have any questions?
Just to piggyback quickly on what Lisa was saying, we will be bringing forward in a week at the November 22nd board meeting a contract to work with the intermediate unit in the consortium that they're putting together to develop a hybrid learning plan for the Eastern Area School District. So we will be bringing that contract forward next week.
Would the board be interested in information on hybrid learning? Is that something that you'd like to have a little bit of 5-10 minute overview of what it is, how it impacts on
Yeah, I
schools?
think that'd be great.
Can you send
That
it
would
out
be nice.
Friday with your, with his board briefing on Friday? That way they have more than just you to look at it.
Some information basically kind of defines what it is, what it would look like, something that you might have the answer to.
Absolutely.
Great, good,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Vanderberg.
Alright. So here we have policy. Let's look at round A, policy 113 for behavior support for students.
Yeah, so policy 113-2, it was originally adopted in 2009. As you know, the special education department goes through cyclical monitoring by the Bureau of Special Ed, so the policies are usually reviewed to make sure that they're in compliance, IDEA regs, and this is one of those policies. So there are just a few minor changes, and they're marked. There is one grammatical error that we have obviously deleted, but the rest of the strike-throughs that you see have been removed to make sure that we're in compliance with that regulation moving forward. Any questions?
Questions from the board, questions from the public regarding policy 113. All right, we're moving on to full board.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderberg. We're going back up to number 2, buildings and grounds. Mr. Obi can be with us today. Mr. Simonetta.
Yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Reinhardt for quick remarks on this well-involved presentation.
Right. We have a rather important conversation that we'd like to open up tonight here at our public meeting regarding the board's wish to have a 5-year strategic plan created, if you will, and as a point of discussion for us. And what we have tonight is the results of about 7 months of work with an administrative team, a board team, our engineers, our architects, working together and looking at all of our facilities and looking at their current state of needs, if you will, our current state of needs instructionally, and we have tried to prioritize this list for you to try to make this as easy as possible for us to look at and comprehend, because sometimes these become very complicated and difficult. I would like to say that the committee has worked very hard at this idea of prioritizing these projects and has taken into consideration the conversations that have occurred here at the board level and in other places regarding circumstances with our buildings. I can say to you that one important point that has been made each fall and spring is the concern that parents, students, and staff members have expressed about the fact that we have buildings without air conditioning. And so that message has been heard and by our committee, and we have decided tonight to present to you a priority list that will help to rectify that set of circumstances as soon as possible. We have one project, and that's the repair of the roof of the high school, which is very high on our list and something that we believe we can undertake rather quickly. The aging chiller system at the high school is on this list. You may want to remember and consider the fact that with the exception of the Paxinosa project, the district has not undertaken any renovations in our facilities since about 2007. And I think that's important for all of us to consider, that the time is right for us to review the conditions of our schools and to think about how we can best structure a plan that's going to get us engaged in repairing some of these buildings or replacing them. you're going to see a recommendation that includes replacing 2 elementary schools. And I hope that you'll ask questions about the costs for renovating those 2 buildings, because that's very important for us to compare the cost of renovating versus the cost of rebuilding. And in both cases, we are fortunate to have building sites next to those schools, meaning that schools can remain in session, we hope, while new construction is going on. One of the great advantages we have now as a school district to be able to undertake some of these projects is that we do have the extra space, and we're utilizing that space for the Paxinosa renovation. And I think if you recall, we saved in the neighborhood of about $5 million in doing so. We're hoping that by delaying the closing of EAA and moving our academy into the middle school, we can save millions on these projects by being able to free up schools while we undertake these renovations. And that shortens the construction time required and thereby saves us what I hope will be lots of valuable dollars. Those are some of the key points that I wanted to share with you before we start this conversation. I also think it's very important for us as a group to share these points with the public, to let them know that this is a needed conversation, that it really should be undertaken at this stage and at this point, because we have been waiting now for about since 2007 to really look at our facilities. My opinion would be that delaying this examination of our facilities and where we want to invest our dollars really would not be prudent and would not make us good managers of the public's lands and buildings here in the school district. So I think this is a valuable discussion. I applaud the board for wanting to do this because you, in doing so, you set us on a responsible course here for the future. And we have a lot of things to talk about, not just with the projects themselves, but obviously with the financing and what that's going to mean for us in the future. And that's another big piece of this conversation. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Josh from Dewey Engineering, and Josh is going to review the information that we have. Josh?
Thank you very much for that comprehensive introduction. It was very good. Before I start, let me apologize. My voice is not 100% tonight, so I will do my best. Hopefully the questions don't require any lengthy responses. So again, the capital improvement process. I just wanted to take a few minutes and kind of recap for the board members, some of whom maybe newer members, maybe haven't been through the entire process from start to finish. So I'll just take a few minutes and talk about the capital improvement, the capital improvement plan development and process of executing projects. So Dewey Engineering, we've been preparing and updating a yearly capital improvement plan for many, many years. The thing that's different about this go-around is we really commend the administration and the board in really tackling some of those projects that were kind of out in the horizon, some larger dollar projects. I think everybody recognizes at this point it's really time to sit down and regroup and look at a five-year plan to attack some of these needs. So we go through the buildings, we identify what are the needs, and then those needs have to somehow be organized and prioritized. And we do that. I'll take you through the process of how we do that. But safety obviously is a very important aspect. The curricular impact is very important. So as you can tell from some of the things that are being recommended, specifically with HVAC upgrades, with air conditioning upgrades, those are some of the items that kind of make their way to the top of the list. The process and the document is intended to be fluid. It can change yearly. It can even change within that year. Some things may be identified late. Hey guys, we got to get this addressed as part of the summer project. Let's incorporate it into the plan, get the budget pulled together, and that process really is intended to be flexible. So recently we have tackled projects including roof replacements, the tennis courts over at the high school in the past couple of years, boiler replacements. Those are just some examples of the summer projects, the capital projects that come about as a result of the capital planning process. So to execute these projects, in general, there are two ways of doing it. Doing engineering as the district's engineer. In some cases, we are the design professional. In the example of the boiler replacement, court replacement, we would be the design professional. A lot of the projects that we're going to be talking about tonight do require a separate architectural professional. In the case of Paxinosa, and with what we're looking at moving forward, Alloy 5 is the architect, and they have a separate contract directly with the district. Dewey Engineering would remain as the construction manager and the resident project engineer. So we actually maintain a presence on site throughout the construction process. Okay, but they're two separate contracts directly with the district. Thanks. This is just a snapshot, an example of the types of building by building itemized recommendations that are made. This happens to be for Tracy. So we would identify each item as a recommended capital improvement. The yellow column is the priority. So the next slide will take you through the priority matrix, and that spits out on a scale of 1 to 10 how urgent, how important is that individual item. And again, we look at things like safety, curricular value, educational impact. Those are weighed a little bit more heavily than some of the other categories, such as energy efficiency, sustainability, those types of things. Those are important, but we do try to put the emphasis more on safety and the educational process with that. So the point of this is, of all the recommendations that we make, we don't just pull out of the hat what are the top 5 most important. It's actually taken through a process that's very systematic to help us identify where the needs truly are. So ultimately, for each building, we tally up those individual capital improvements, and we come up with a total dollar amount strictly for capital improvements. And what we do with that is we then take a look at the larger picture for that building. What would it cost to renovate this facility? What would it cost to build a new facility of the same size? We look at those budget projections, those budget numbers, and we compare how much do we have for individual capital needs at this building. What that does is it helps us look at the ratio of what are the capital needs versus what could we potentially spend for a renovated or a new building. And once you get up to a certain percentage, it really kind of raises the flag of, hey, let's really take a hard look at a more holistic renovation or new building, get a better bang for the buck. Address these needs, but get even more enhancement out of it. So the 4 that are highlighted that I'd like to point out, 2 of which are the elementary new construction projects that we're talking about, are actually 86% and 92% of the cost to renovate the facility, those individual capital needs. That's why we're looking at projects at Cheston and at Palmer. That's also why, if you look at Forks and Tracy, we're also looking at more interior projects involving lighting, involving HVAC replacement, more mechanical replacements, almost more along the lines of the Paxinosa project that we're currently tackling. So again, this sheet, it's a really good snapshot of overall district-wide what are the facilities as a whole that really need the most attention? And that's why we're looking at those 4 elementary schools for the larger projects in particular. Any questions with that? Okay, so I kind of covered it on the previous slide. When to implement the individual upgrades? Well, that would be if you have a newer facility, one that's currently up to most codes, energy efficient, has a good efficient floor plan. That's a good candidate to tackle those individual capital projects. When do you consider renovations? Well, again, if your capital improvement costs approach the cost to renovate, as you saw on the previous slide, that's obviously marker number 1. If your building currently does not meet current codes, if it's not completely ADA accessible, if there are energy efficiency concerns with that building, that would be also additional markers to consider renovations. A new building as opposed to a renovation. Why would you build new? Well, you need all the renovation factors. Plus, let's take a look at the layout of the building, the floor plan. Is there a more efficient way to place those classrooms? You know, with 21st century learning, with collaborative learning, are the classrooms located and structured the way that we think they should be at this point? Is the building envelope at a point where we just can't make any more energy efficient upgrades to it? Are we just losing money going through the roof or through the windows or walls? So those are all factors to consider when looking at the cost of building new versus renovating an existing shell of the building. Okay. Thanks. So let's just take a look real quick as an example at Palmer. If you would look at the Palmer elementary floor plan, you'd say, well, what's going on here? You know, this is really sprawling, it's spread out. Palmer, in addition to having an infrastructure that is sorely in need of replacement, Palmer would be an excellent candidate for a more consolidated floor plan. Again, helping with the educational process, helping with the energy efficiency of the building, that we're not heating corridors and distant classroom sections, that can be more consolidated into one piece. So again, Palmer, in particular, of many of the buildings throughout the district, I think Palmer would lend itself to a new footprint more so than others.
Josh, if I could just interrupt here. What you're looking at now, projected before you, is the schedule, and it also is the list of projects that our group has considered to be recommended to the board in a priority list, beginning with a high school partial roof replacement, which you can see we want to get started as soon as possible after the turn of the year. I want you to take a look for a second down that list. I want you to note several other items here that are not related to our buildings. We do have a need at some point in time to replace the turf field and track. It has reached its limit and its lifespan. It's not that we're adding. We are concerned because at a certain moment in time with these facilities, you become open to safety risks and so forth in its use. The library roof coping replacement is on there. Now we're having, and we will be having, continued conversations with the property and the entire enterprise of our public library. So we felt that that should be on there and that we should list that on this list. Cottingham Stadium. There is no question that Cottingham's the facility there needs upgrading and needs attention. Next is the high school natatorium, the swimming pool. By everyone's account, we all know that we're on extended life, in that swimming pool. I was going to say swimming hole. And we have lots of people who strongly advocate for swimming and all that offers our youth in this community. So we felt we needed to put that on this list. Once again, as Josh has indicated, and as we want to stress, this is a liquid kind of document here. We can adjust and move things around as needed. Last but not least on our list, and certainly it's not at the bottom because it's not a priority, but we need to include the cost of readjusting the first floor of the middle school for eventually housing our academy program. It's not a big investment, but there are things that we want to do to make sure that is appropriately and safely housed in the middle school area. So at some point in time, when no matter what projects we choose or not choose, one of the costs that we're going to be looking at is the relocation of the academy. Because the one thing that I believe is important for us to remember is that remains a priority. It remains an important recommendation. Once we move the academy program to another building, that frees us up to sell that property in that building, and there will be a one-shot income and to the district. But it also will address the results of and the recommendation of the PEL report, which showed us that we have additional space in the district that we don't currently need. So that helps to go through the list, perhaps, so that I'm sorry for interjecting.
Josh, excuse me, I have one question. John, as I look at your recommendations for Cheston and Palmer new construction to begin in December, Josh, we received a grant that your office went after for $2 million on Paxinosa, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Now, it's my understanding, and I don't know if it's accurate, I want to confirm or deny, we could be eligible for those, another $2 million on both projects if we're by February, correct?
Currently the program is closed. We're told that it will reopen in February of 2017 or sometime thereabouts.
So it'd be possible to get another $2 million for each project?
It would be, again, the stipulation there is, first of all, we need to be successful in the application in being, accepted. Then we would need to hit LEED Gold certification in order to get that grant. Yes, but absolutely, that's certainly on the table. We're prepared to go after that again, similar like we did for Paxinosa. So
and just to veer off for a minute, but Mike, I believe we received a check for that today.
A couple of 240,000 something.
Out of the $2 million.
Yes, so the first installment we had submitted to the state, and we just got confirmation that the first check to the district for $240,000 was being processed.
Ken, what are we going to do with that?
You want to do that?
Can you turn it into the 500 for us quick?
I think the Golden Goose is out in the parking lot.
So with the financial planning process, the schedule that is in front of you is broken down by fiscal year. So don't get confused with where the lines are within the months. So we did give a fiscal year projection based on the cash outlay per year. So again, I just for 2017, looking ahead to 2017 projects. Again, we would like to get the high school partial roof replacement started as quickly as possible to get that out to bid by March. By January, so that we can get contractors on board and start the work hopefully in May of next year. Tracy again is going to be getting HVAC upgrades, air conditioning, some other mechanical, electrical improvements. That design phase would start right away in December, likely as well. as will Cheston and Palmer design phase, starting with the land development process with the city, with Palmer Township. That's a lengthy process. We need to get started with that as quickly as possible and get those permits and approvals started. Early 2017, so that we can continue on with that design phase process. Some of the other items looking ahead into 2018, design phase will not start until later in the summer into next year. But again, the focus and the big ticket items obviously are new Cheston and a new Palmer. I also wanted to point out with this construction schedule, again, we are using that middle school space, the space currently where Paxinosa students are living for the year. We do plan to keep the kids at Cheston, build a new facility on that same parcel. Palmer is going to be a little trickier. It looks like the ideal site placement at Palmer is going to require those students to vacate, again, move into the middle school space, and we can tackle demolition and a new Palmer by moving those students out. So that's how this construction time frame is kind of phased.
Yeah, that's important, I think, for everybody to note that when we're working on those two projects at the same time, it's very ambitious in many ways, but because we can house Cheston kids in the building while the construction is going on, that life continues, and we've got a new building going up, and that enables us then to move the Palmer students into the accommodations at middle school. So that's where we're at. Again, I must say that's a tremendous advantage for us as a school district.
I have a question, Mr. Reinhardt.
Yeah.
The first 4 projects are going to start November, December, or you're recommending. So next meeting on Tuesday, will we need to vote just on these 4, or are you looking for a vote on the whole 5-year plan?
Well, we certainly, by our suggested schedule, looking at the board to endorse or reject the schedule that we've recommended here for these initial projects. And as you go further down the list, that's the area that the board has to talk about that to decide where you believe, what you believe should be, if any of these things should be included in the acquisition of the finances to do these things. And that's the conversation that we all have to have together. So I would say to you that the priority items on our list, as you can see, will begin very soon in design phases, and that's there because we believe we need to get rolling with these things.
So I guess my question is, so for the next meeting,
yes,
you're looking for a vote just on those 4 initial things first, or are you guys looking at the entire 5-year plan? I mean, obviously we can talk and move things around, but what is your desire? What are you looking for Tuesday?
Well, this is an important conversation, and one when we talk about the finances, you'll see has tremendous implications for us financially, and so it's a little bit hard for me to be specific about it. I would like to urge the board to proceed to help us proceed in tackling those initial priorities that we have on our list, because I think they're important.
Right. Part of the concept was that it was important to get a plan, because without a plan you have no idea where you're going in the first place. And so this was a good shot at a plan to at least have something to say to look at, or then to lay the dollars on top and say where it comes out, and then from that say, do we have to adjust? Are we comfortable with it and everything? And trying to project ahead, where are we financially and everything? Can we accomplish it? what is the strain, if there's any strains on anybody. My understanding is, based on what I heard from a couple people, there's, not thinking administratively, but both from the architect and engineer, there's no strains with this plan.
When I also spoke with the administration today, there's no strains on them as well.
So at least it's a plan to start with.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. I just didn't know what we were looking for, what your goal was 5 years out. Josh, thank you very much. I'm not done with you. Ken, can I borrow you at the podium for a minute, please?
Absolutely.
Well, I guess with something like this plan, if we were hypothetically to say, let's look at the whole $100 million, if something else came up in the meantime, we've still got that money that we can address something more critical with that ends up with something.
Yeah, I think, just to add, I think what we're looking for is, because some of these items, we need to design things to start immediately in order to accomplish for the summer, this couple of things. We can pull back from these other items.
Absolutely. I was just wondering what your goal was.
I think the top four that you mentioned, John, are something that we were looking for next week, to start the design process.
So, Ken, what I asked you to come up for, on top of personal stock tips, to give me afterward, number-wise, on these first four, do you have this? The first four, in your opinion, and I believe you told us the last time you were here, this is the time for a park. Or a better time, a relatively better time. I mean, do you still feel that way regarding the first four projects of 70?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the market. Let's talk about the last 7 days, which are sort of unprecedented. Your 401ks and your pension programs went sky high at all-time equity highs. The bond market lost 60 basis points, 0.6%, over 0.5%, all in 7 days. Now, granted, we've saved $11 million plus since 2011. Yeah, we've done a great job in terms of monitoring. You've done a great job in terms of monitoring the debt. So that money's gone plowed back into the district. 60 basis points is a lot. And why is that happening? One, the overseas market's not thrilled with Trump's victory. Okay? They're afraid of him. They're afraid of what he's going to do, and therefore they are pretty much pulling back on some of their government purchases, and they were a big purchaser. They're afraid of the trade programs. And regardless of who was elected, the programs, the infrastructure, the jobs creations, etc., is pretty inflationary. And so that's the other thing driving the market. The market stabilized a little bit today. So while historically, yes, it's a very good time. We're talking about a 5-year program here. Okay? One thing we did for tonight, and then I'll discuss that whenever you want me to discuss it, is we gave you a snapshot of 50 million, 75 million, 100 million. All right? Projects are roughly 100 million here. When I was here in September, we talked about, we just gave you a snapshot of $50 million. Now, I always make notes, and so I'm just going to read my notes. I stressed the importance to the board, and they all shook their heads, to begin getting bills in place. So here's my documentation.
Don't read too much into that.
Right.
He said it's not.
We shake our heads.
So anyway, I say that jokingly, but I also don't say it jokingly from the standpoint that I think everything you're looking at, and this district has never borrowed money frivolously. You've always done it, and I've been here 30 years. You've always done it when you needed to do it, educationally, refunding-wise. You've always done it in a very, good manner. And so I think that, I've been privy to some of the materials from your architects and your engineers. I think it's great stuff. I applaud you for taking a district-wide look. And you're going to have some tough choices, picking and choosing, or, figuring out what you're going to do. That's why we sort of presented 50, 75, and 100, just to give you an idea, okay? Because when I leave, my goal is you're going to shake your heads again that you need to start putting money in place. The only way you have a chance to do any of this, I don't care if it's 50 or 100, is you got to start really putting money in place. Okay? We try to do some refundings, but we've about gone to the well. Now I have 2 banks that I'm working with that we have some chances to do some refundings on the 11 and 12s that we had talked about when I was here before. And so, that's going to help a little bit, but it's nothing like millions and millions of dollars. But it's something. Do you want me to go through this now? Yeah. Okay. First page is gross debt service. We don't need to waste any time. You guys have seen this before. Next page is net. Let's get right into the meat of the matter. This is $50 million. Okay, this is almost identical. I made some adjustments to rates. It's almost identical to what we looked at back in September. So, at $50 million level, we have $10 million for 17 because some of the projects you need to get started. You sort of might say we need to get started on some of the stuff that's going to happen this summer. So we have $10 million coming this summer, 9.5, whatever that number is going to be, based on some IRS code. And then we just do an arbitrary $20 million and $20 million. Okay? So this is the starting point, and you need 1.14 mils to do that, spread out over a period of a couple years. All right? Next page, $75 million. All right? So now we're doing more projects. Okay? Again, we're getting the money 18 and 19 in this case, based off of your construction schedule that that Josh has reviewed with you. You pretty much need it probably in this fashion. So now you're talking about a little more than $1.5 million, 1.65 going 4/10, 4/10, 4/10, 4/10. And then you go to the last option, which is $100 million. Okay, you can see your 2 mils roughly going to $0.5 million for 4 straight years. Now, look at the footnotes. This is the big elephant in the room. Where are rates going to be? Okay, we don't know where rates are going to be. At $100 million, we have some options. Maybe we look at some variable rate debt. We did variable rate debt here back in 20 years ago. We did very well with it. Okay, so maybe that's a component of a larger type transaction, $100 million. I'm not sure I'd do it on 50, but at 100 maybe we do. So we don't know where rates are going to be. Okay, so that's the big unknown. When you're talking about a construction project, capital plan, 4 or 5 years down the road, okay, the most important thing that I would probably say to you, to give you time to pick your projects and do what you need to do. Don't get married to the projects right now in terms of you have some time to decide which of the laundry lists that Josh just reviewed with you you're going to do. Maybe you're going to do some now, maybe you're not going to do some. Okay? But buy into this schedule. Start at $0.5 million. All right? Do a half this year. Do a half next year. And then if you find out you only do $80 million, well then fine. Then we just maybe, can curtail it maybe in year 3 or year 4. And you know what? $100 million may not be enough. Now these guys are good at making estimates, but they don't know what's going to happen 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road either. So maybe it's 110 or 120. And so now all of a sudden, depending where rates are or whatever, but you need to get married to the fact that as a city board, trying to move the district forward, trying to do the right thing for education, you need to come up and just I'm going to get as many mills as Mike tells me I can get. And if that's a half, great. If it's 0.6, great. If it's 0.4, great. But you got to max out. You got to max out. And then we got to get lucky. We got to get lucky on rates. Okay? Now, you would think that rates have to stay relatively stable. Why? Because the U.S. government has a lot of debt. And if rates go up higher, guess what? Their debt's going up higher too. And now we're going to go back to a spiral back in the 80s, which I don't think anyone is going to allow to happen. Okay. So, unless Mike can invest his money in equities the last week, maybe we have money that he's not telling us. But I doubt that's the case. But the good news is that I think you do have options. Okay, you got a great team sitting behind me. They're going to put things in front of you. They're going to work with you on whether you can do it or not do it. You got myself and Brad are going to work with Mike and the administration in terms of saying, okay, guys, this is what you got to do if you want to fund this. So that's sort of. So I'm going to write down here that they all shook their heads. I'm going to write that down again.
Thank you, Ken.
Go ahead. Good.
So as you look at it, you talk about getting a half bill in place.
Yeah.
But when do we start to actually borrow that money? Are you looking that we borrow anyway and we're trying to get the half mills in place to keep us covered?
We can't get that. Well, we borrow some in 17. We borrow probably 10 million just to get you through this summer. Okay, but the balance of it based on the spreadsheet is not going to happen until 18. Okay, now, if we knew rates were going to go up 2%, somehow maybe we try to figure out how to borrow it now. The problem with borrowing it now is the carrying cost.
Right.
Okay? You see there's a column in the middle that says less interest earning school district reserves. Sort of have that at zero. You know, it's not a lot. If we start carrying, if we go out and get $75 million, carrying that money is going to be very expensive. Okay? So then it is, geez, it's not that I got to roll the dice. If we can't afford to get it now, we have to do it and try to phase it in, and hopefully we get lucky. Now, the last 9 years, okay, in hindsight, you know, we should have started this 5 years ago. But again, projects come when projects come. Not to be, you know, no one's pointing, you know, a finger at anybody saying, geez, why don't we do this? Because we had 9 years of pretty low rates, as you know, because we saved $11 million. Okay? But this is the best anyone can do now. It's like a balance sheet. This is a point in time. All right? So the plan, my suggestion, regardless if you end up at 100 or 80 or 60 or whatever it is, you start maxing out the next couple of years. Max out. You have to, or you have no chance, unless you want to go to referendum.
Mike, and as you look at it, right now, if you were projecting ahead, you don't know what the index is going to be for this coming year yet.
You do know.
You do?
3.2.
Okay.
Now, we were lucky in the last schedule at $50 million, and we were comfortable being able to fund that or start the 10 schedule here within the parameters of that index. I don't know as of today or as of last week, I'm sure where that's going to end up for us, but we don't know the ramifications of the charge and that impact. So we were in a good position, a good start, to be able to fund those next 4 or 5 years, that extra quarter of a mil or 0.4 of a mil within the parameters of the index. As we stand here tonight, I don't know. But the plan is to move forward, get this started, and in January, I'm going to be coming to you with a preliminary budget. And that's going to be the discussion whether we can do this in the parameters or if we need to go over index. And again, I want understood, we do not need to go over index to fund this program.
You're going over index because of other costs.
He's saying
When we
potentially,
started-
if we go over, it'll be because of the
When
charter
we
school.
started this, in discussions, charter school wasn't even on the radar.
Right.
We were trying to do this, to borrow this money, and stay within our parameters.
So really, it's going to come down to, once we see the budget, determining if we want to or want to consider going over index.
And I'm starting the formula, we'll see what our exceptions would be, our amounts.
Yeah.
I don't know what that, the last time we did that, I think we had a little over 2 million we could have went for.
And
A mill is worth about $1.6 million.
So that being the case, then once we see that, we could also be determining how we're continuing with these projects, even within the first 4.
Correct.
I mean, the first 2, see, we could fund the first 2 for the most part out of our current reserve, right?
I just want to caution the board, and everybody said here tonight, we put this program together to adjust our facilities that we haven't done in almost 10 years, with the exception of PACS. And things will come up along the way, like those expenses, like the charter school. I don't think our facilities should suffer. Let's separate the reason for going over index. We put ourselves in a good position to start investing in these facilities, the HVACs and all the elementary schools. We need to do that. We need to consciously separate other reasons for increases versus what we've worked on for many years to get to this point.
Mike.
Sorry, that was mine.
I'm gonna go around the table because I like to hear if anybody else has opinions. Personally, I like the first 4, and I'm even thinking about the first 5 with Forks air conditioning, because I mean, you're gonna give the elementary schools air conditioning. You know, we might as well just get Forks theirs at the same time. But Mike, you said, you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, we've done what we were supposed to do in the last how many years. Now charter schools coming in, and they might, you know. But here's the sad news.
Frank, just to interrupt you 1 second. On number 5 there, I think part of that delay was because it was moving the students from Tracy out, and then when the students from Tracy moved back into their building, then the kids from Forks could move out.
Right.
So that was the trigger there.
Yes.
So it's not delaying it, it's setting it because of the use of...
Well, I didn't say why it was being delayed. It was just a little after, a few months after the rest. But if that's the reason being, then that's understandable.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, until the state gets it together, if this charter school comes to Easton, there's going to be more and more charter schools coming to Easton. We're going to be like Allentown and Bethel, losing $25 million a year on charter schools. But to Mike's point, we can't let that interfere with what we need to do for our buildings, for our students, for our staff. So I'm on board, you know, for Tuesday's vote with at least the first 4 starting those. And I'm going to go this way to Barron.
I would actually go with the first 5. I know we were kind of talking about the timing and everything, but I do agree that should definitely include the first 5.
And I'm okay with that.
I'd be okay with the first 5.
Ms. Hess. Right? Mr. Monahan?
So you're looking at $76 million.
We're not looking at anything now. What the hell do you want to do?
So we're looking at $76 million, basically, and but how much of that is through 2019? That's only what, 28? Now that's the majority of it. And so then your thought, Ken, would then be do some 2017, 2018, and 2019 series to cover that?
Based on, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong here, but Cheston and Palmer started, say, beginning of 19 and end of 20, right?
Right.
So we would need to get those funds probably fairly close to this structure. Maybe go back a page. If you go back to the $75 million study, go back to page. But yeah, if you're talking 17 through 19, beginning at 20 maybe. We're talking 17, 19, beginning at 20, we would break it out. So it still equates to putting the max as much as you can in the next 2+ years, and then let's see where we are.
Yeah, because based on these numbers, by end of 19, you're talking about 62 million, right?
Yeah. So,
so it's in this ballpark.
Yeah. I mean, that's 75 million right there. So, let's say you go a half and a half and a half, and then we're fully funded for that first piece in 3 years, and then you take a rest, and then the other projects, they're not happening until a little later on. You're talking the natatorium, you're talking, Cottingham, that stuff's happening out in 2021. Maybe have a little rest there for a little bit, a year or so, to start funding the rest. But regardless, in your mind, if you're talking 75 or 100, you're between 1.5 and 2 mils based on the rate assumptions we have.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that still leaves us with the money we have in our reserves today, and you say assume 75 mils for these projects only, and then other things that come up, we still pull from the reserves that we already have in place today, right? So, yeah, I'd be on board with that.
What are we sitting on reserves?
Capital reserve, we have about $4.5 million.
Because we use a lot of
capital projects.
Yeah.
We have not counting the PACs.
Right.
We went into that with about 4.
Okay.
So I'd be on board with it.
Yeah, I'm definitely on board since I've been part of the committee from the very beginning. However, I would like to talk about other funding options for Cottingham, the pool. I mean, I think there's people in the community, there's alumni, there's resources out there that we need to tap into, and with the help of the foundation, hopefully tap into and see about those kind of fundings.
Well, I mean, I think I can speak for everybody. If somebody comes, if a group of people want to pay for Cottingham, we're not going to say, no, you're not in schedule.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Put it out there. Make sure we air this twice.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as Tuesday goes, we're looking at those. Also, when we're talking about this, we always want to look at the worst case scenario. But I do remember, and I don't want to put too much on the reef, but and Randy, they came well under budget on PACs. They got us the $2 million grant, which if they start designing these two now, PACs and or Chester and Palmer, we have a chance to get $4 million. You know what I mean? They've been working very hard for us to keep our costs down and come under budget and get us some extra money. So
we've had a lot of good luck, great engineering, great design, good rates. We've been very lucky. So, we have to prepare ourselves mentally for at least the rate side, because if inflation's going up, their costs are going to go up too.
Well, you think so?
Construction, right?
Not mine, but
well, no. right. But I mean, construction costs, all that stuff is going to go up as well. So
let me contact them next week.
Right.
Why next week and tonight?
Okay.
So let me ask this: these numbers, do they include some sort of contingency, like a 20%, 30%?
Chuck would have been not that high, but I'll let him answer.
15%. The contingency on these. And I'm talking about really the ones that are out, like 2, 3, 4, 5 years out. Because you don't know your cost today for those out years, right?
Right. Now that contingency covers.
Can you say that number again, please?
It's 25%.
25%.
It's for the entire process. And there are design scope changes, all that kind of stuff, not just construction inflation.
Yeah, and I've been involved in many projects, and we always start off with a 30%, right? And then as time goes on and you get closer and closer, you try to dwindle that down. So
Well, we don't have 30, I can tell you that, because I know we don't.
Yeah.
We only have, like Josh said, we had a 25%, so it's for fees and contingency, though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so if you take that out, so pure contingency would probably be around 15%.
Okay.
Is there any other questions?
Ken, just these numbers, those mills, that's based on new grossing.
Yeah.
Because we don't
When you
know
look at the
plan-
reimbursement, or when you look at putting those 2, 3, 4 there, we show no reimbursement, no plan con at
So
all.
the plan con does come back.
If you get
Those
lucky,
budget years,
that'll help.
reduced.
Yeah, that is based off of no plan con, because who knows what's going to happen with plan con.
Right. Any other questions from the board?
The only comment I'm going to make again, Frank, is it's not a problem with the half anymore. The problem is, where does that tax end up on the individuals in all the residents of the community?
Right. Because if that ends up being 4.5,
right,
then we've got an issue.
Well, but at that point, once you've started and told these guys to start the design and everything, which we're going to do before we know those numbers, they're going to be in the middle of it. Then it's not a matter of pulling the plug, because if they went out and they hired employees and everything else to start this process, it can't be, oh, well, you know what, we just found out in January, February that our dollars, we're not going to approve a budget that high or, approve a village that high. They're underway. So,
But I guess my question is what Mike said earlier.
I mean, we're going to be coming, the plan was, and what I just said, we're going to be coming to you with numbers, and whatever that index, whatever we need, that's going to be funding this new venture that's about to take place, not these projects.
Which is the charter school. So do we let a charter school hinder us from, I'm not saying you, I'm not asking you, I'm just asking in general. You know what I mean?
I'm saying I can't help that, but I think the people that are paying the tax bill don't look at all those individual pieces that way. They just look at when the tax bill arrives, it went up 20% or whatever. That's what, or 10% or 5%, and that's the type of thing that they look at.
Well, I think it's up to us to make it clear why, if it goes over, is because of a charter school. Maybe people will start finally going after the state and start to get some funding reform done. You know, we've been asking for it. Our new governor said he was going to do it. We haven't had anything yet. So we must hard, that's part of my language, to put the district in a position for us not to go over index and get these buildings that haven't been taken care of. Then a charter school comes to town and just throws a wrench in everything. You know, the people need to start arguing and pointing the finger where it belongs, and that's on the state level.
And I agree that the problem is these buildings need it. There's no doubt about it. I'm not debating that issue at all. It's just where's the balance. So I think that's really the key when everybody says that next week, because once they start, then it's not pulling the plug when you get, then they've got to be ready to approve the budget as well.
Sure.
So when we talk about this on Tuesday, are we going to be talking about 50, 75, or 100?
I think that's got to come from the administration on Friday in the briefing, you know, and then we can look at, and please, whatever you guys come up with, just make sure you send every piece of information regarding this so everybody has a chance to review it and be familiar with it before Tuesday.
Ken and I will talk about it.
Yeah, at the beginning of it.
There's another piece to this. If we're moving ahead like that, one of the things that we have to do, and we haven't addressed here, is we have to look at formally extending Randy's contract then too. Because, you know, he was doing this out of the goodness of his heart. Now, I don't know that he may want to continue doing that, but you know, when you're officially starting to do something, if he's making commitments to hire people and everything, then I think he has to know that the commitment's there as well.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Monaghan, your comment, 50, 75, 100, I think is a good comment, but I'm not sure from the, again, I'll go back to the financing side. You got to go as much as you can, as much as you can, as much as you can. And then you're going to blend in, because sure, you have time to discuss whether you're going to do A, B, C, or D, or E. Right. But from a pure budget standpoint, if Mike came back to you and said, you know what, we can go up 0.6, then I'm going to tell you, fine, go up 0.6. Because that's only going to help you, take a known today versus the unknown in the future. Especially when you're talking 50, 75, or 100.
Right, and 3 years from now, nobody will remember that we went up 0.6 to, this year. Bob will, but
taxpayers will.
No, the taxpayers will be focused on what we're talking about that year.
All right, Ken, thank you. Is there any other questions from the board? Hearing none.
Good luck in the process. We'll let you know what's going on.
Ken, if you can hang back for a second, as well as Reef and Josh and Randy. We're going to move that forward to Tuesday's board meeting for a vote. Any other business from the board? All right, just me. Don't you? On December 5th will be my last day as a board member with the Easton School Board. I have some other things that need to be tended to. We had a great run, a great 5 years, and it's time for me to move on. There's some things I want to address with contracts and things between now and then. I'm hoping that the board will give permission for Ally to advertise. So on December 6th at the reorganization meeting, you could appoint somebody in my place. And don't worry about getting the gifts. I will be taking the gavel and the placard with me. I've already discussed that with Reinhardt. It will be gone. So whoever's going to be the president, make sure you have something.
And don't forget
I would say Ally has a certificate.
I do want a certificate. But since I will still be the president until then, do I sign the certificate? All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.